Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdog's Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini-episode, I have two accounts of startling bizarre phenomena. We're going to be reading more Thunderbird accounts and more stories involving pale crawlers. Let's get into the first article titled, Giant Thunderbird Encounters. Eyewitnesses describe massive birds too large to explain. Let's get into it now and hear exactly what these witnesses saw. Over several decades, witnesses in Virginia, Pennsylvania, Alberta, Connecticut, and Iowa have described encounters with unusually large birds that seemed far beyond the scope of ordinary identification. Some were seen gliding silently over mountain roads. Others were perched over and near rivers, lakes, and back roads, and one reportedly struck the windshield of a pickup truck before flying away. Very interesting and intriguing. Let's read on and hear these accounts, folks, and read exactly what happened. Witness reports, I had an experience about 30 years ago in Virginia. A huge bird landed on the windshield of our small pickup truck and completely covered the windshield. Its wings also extended at least 2 to 3 feet beyond both sides of the truck. We were on a back road heading toward a lake to go fishing early in the morning. After the impact, we slammed on the brakes. We were only going about 25 miles per hour, and the whole thing lasted maybe 4 seconds before the bird took off. I will never forget it. They don't give us any initials to the guy or any real details beyond, well, the basics, folks. But if that happened to anyone, I can imagine maybe this guy didn't want to basically have his name associated with this story, but wanted answers when he basically uploaded his story to the internet, folks. Either way, can you imagine having this incident happen to you? Having actual physical damage happen to your car? Yeah, even I'm a bit lost for words with that, folks. But this is only the first story. There are several more, so let's read them as well. It was around 1980, give or take, on a fall weekend. I had recently studied, ornithology, and what I saw reminded me of what many people described in reports about these giant birds. This happened on a mountaintop south of Canton off Route 14. I was walking with my family on the road near my dad's cabin. We were near a clearing, and I had my head down watching where I was stepping. Suddenly, a shadow crossed the road. At first, I thought it was the shadow of a plane. It blocked the sun like a cloud. Then I saw it. The bird glided without making a sound. It had brown feathers, and the wing-tip feathers looked almost like fingers. I do not mean that in a strange or supernatural way. That is just the best way I can describe how the feathers looked. Well, like a UFO sign, this entity didn't make sounds, folks. The fact that the Thunderbird might be related on some level to other phenomena like, UFOs, is an interesting notion, folks. Why wasn't this entity making any sound, perhaps? I mean, yeah, it was a bird, but why? I think there should have been some sound, perhaps. But let's read on. It perched near the woodline, and based on the estimated tree height, I judged it to be at least 6 feet tall. My mother saw it fly over, and the rest of us saw it perched. My best guess at the time was it was a golden eagle, but it was enormous. It sounds like this may be a bird that has survived for decades. Bravo. Indeed. Bravo if indeed this bird is real, folks. But I doubt it was basically a golden eagle. But there are more stories to read through, so let's get to the next one. In 2005, 2 of us were canoeing on the Milk River in Alberta between Colfin Bridge and Ware Bridge downstream from Poverty Rock. We saw what I can only describe as the Thunderbird. The party was as big as a human. The wingspan looked about as long as our canoe, which was 16 feet or more. It was nothing less than that. As we floated by, it lifted up from its perch. Off its perch. After we passed, it landed back on the same perch. Later downstream, we saw a pair of golden eagles. There was no comparison. The more you are out in nature, the more you will see. I have also seen the see-through entity things 4 times now. Once was in Idaho, the next day near St. Regis, Montana, and twice near Red Rock, Kalu in Alberta. I have seen other things too. There is a lot out there. The older you get, the more you realize that. Make sure you write it down clearly when it happens. I have to agree with that statement, folks. But let's read on. I remember going fishing about 35 years ago in Connecticut. I slid down a dirt hill to the water's edge. There were poles sticking out of the water about 5 feet from shore. When I looked up, there was a bird standing there. It was about 4 to 5 feet tall with pure red eyes. It looked prehistoric. I flew back up that little dirt hill and ran home. I lived about 5 minutes away. I could not believe what I had had been standing only about 5 feet from me. I had never seen anything like it before, and I have never seen anything like it since. It was unbelievable. I still cannot even find a picture of anything that matches it. I was about 11 years or 12 years old, and it was crazy scary because it was so close to me. Yeah, I have no doubt that this would frighten most people, folks. Yeah, especially we saw this thing with bright red eyes, and it was an enormous giant bird you'd never seen before, folks. Something that most people would consider a monster. But let's read on. Beyond a doubt, I know I saw one approximately 3 years ago. I live in Muscatine, Iowa, right off the Mississippi River where it makes a bend. I saw this large bird sitting on a pole about 400 yards away, and I had to do a double take. When I looked again, the bird was suddenly in flight. I think it spotted me. The trees were overgrown on both sides of the road, and by the time it passed me, I was amazed. I could not believe my eyes. I have not told too many people this story, but I know that bird exists. I honestly think this may be why some people go missing sometimes. I believe a bird like that could swipe a human right off their feet, take them down, and devour them. Whether these birds are actually predatory like that, I cannot say, but I know that bird saw me. It was looking right at me. It took maybe 2 seconds, and then it was up in the woods on the hill. It only flapped its wings twice that I could see, maybe 3 times, but I really do not think it was more than that. So, do you think that these birds are actually responsible for some people going missing? Perhaps in state parks? Maybe these birds are responsible for some of the missing 411 folks. But a lot of the cases don't really basically mention anything like this, but I would not be surprised if they do play a part if these entities, these birds exist. So startling, if true, folks. Now, what do you think these things are? Do you think they're spirits or actual flesh and blood animals, or can they somehow basically cross between these sort of states? Either way, as I said, it's something to consider as well, folks. Maybe they're interdimensional interlopers as too. But let's move on to the next article we have to read today, folks. Pale, long-limbed humanoid seen on wooded family land in north central Alabama, and hear about this encounter with the pale crawlers, folks. And hear exactly how this particular incident went down as well. A nighttime walk through a heavily wooded 170-acre family property in north central Alabama turned unsettling after 2 dogs reacted defensively to something hidden along the trail. Moments later, one witness saw a pale, skinny human-like figure peering from behind a tree, moving in a strange, rhythmic manner before disappearing into the darkness. Ooh. This sounds good, folks, and bizarre. Let's read this intriguing pale crawler story now. And here are all the details. My 2 friends, who are a married couple, and I were walking on my family land in north central Alabama. The property is about 170 acres and is heavily wooded with both pines and hardwoods. It also has many trails running through it. It was already dark, but my friends wanted me to take them for a walk on the trails. A couple of the neighbors' dogs followed us, a coonhound and a Great Pyrenees. We walked south, then east toward my camping area. Now, he's basically written his story in chapters, folks, so let's read the next one. The dogs react. We were hanging out, at my camping spot when something changed behind us. Further back down the trail we had just come from, the dogs started acting strangely. We looked back and saw them come out of the woods to our left and stand on the trail. The Great Pyrenees started growling very low and seemed defensive. The coonhound is usually a goofball, but even he seemed disturbed by something. Something that they could smell, or maybe just sense, folks, something that they needed to be wary of. Both dogs were staring back down the trail toward the west. At that point, I immediately got a strange and serious feeling. It was ominous. I have learned to trust my gut, and I recommend that to anybody who spends time in the woods or around a person or animal that feels instinctively threatening. I told my friends we'd better get back to the house. To get my point across, I added grimly, now. Good for this man, folks, because whatever this entity was, it probably wasn't friendly. Now let's read the next part. Something along the trail. We started heading west on the trail. If I remember correctly, the dogs had already moved away from the area by then. As we were walking, I looked back and saw my friend's wife looking into the woods off the trail. She staggered back a few steps. Her husband had walked ahead, so I asked her what was wrong. This was the same area where the dogs had been growling earlier. She said, "I'll tell you when we get back. I don't want to scare him." her husband is easily spooked, so she kept quiet until we returned to the house. As I said, these people are damn intelligent, and they're keeping their heads calm and not basically allowing, anything to spook them or each other, so very good for them. I'm glad to hear this kind of behavior from these people. Now, this entity seems to have been stalking them, at least to get the feeling that, folks. Or maybe that's just, me and other people who think that, folks. Maybe this thing was actually peaceful, but I'm not quite sure. As I said, let's read more of this story. The entity's appearance. When we got back, I asked her what she had seen. She told us she felt she needed to look off the trail into the trees. When she did, she saw something halfway behind a tree looking at her. We all had headlamps on. She said it was a human-like, pale or whitish, with an oval-shaped head. It looked like it was crouched and had very long limbs. She kept stressing how skinny it was, especially the limbs. She said it had a surprised look on its face, almost like it did not expect us to be there. My friends, relatives, and I use those trails regularly, but not usually at night. So maybe this entity was surprised that these people were there, folks. Also, from the fact that it seemed surprised and not basically hostile, maybe it wasn't, going to attack them. But the fact that it basically was clearly seen by this woman, folks, maybe it wasn't stalking them. It was just, as she said herself, surprised. Very interesting. Now, let's move on and read the next part. The strange movement. According to her, the thing was bobbing back and forth in a creepy way. It would move its head behind the tree, then sway its head and shoulders back rhythmically to look at her again. She said it did not appear aggressive at that moment, but it looked scary. Later, I pulled up the famous trail cam image often associated online with the rake or whatever the thing is supposed to be. When she saw it, she got a shocked look on her face and nodded yes. However, she made it clear that what she saw was not exactly the same. I wouldn't be surprised, folks, because I'm pretty sure that trail cam photo was a mock-up, a hoax. But then again, maybe I'm wrong about that. Either way, clearly, if you saw that, folks, you would think that this entity was the rake, or maybe SCP-096. You get because I think they were inspired by basically the Pale Crawler legend, folks. Either way, very interesting. But we have so much more to go through. Okay, maybe just a little more. Now, the shrill scream. The next night, I was on the back porch when I heard a freaky, very shrill scream come from the woods. I do not know whether the scream and the sound were related, but I have lived in the country for most of my life and have never heard anything like it. There have been multiple strange things that have happened around here, but this is the only incident I know of involving this particular creature. Then again, I'm not surprised about that, folks. I imagine this man probably didn't ask about basically pale crawlers. He might have known about them, but he was probably never asked anyone in the area if they'd seen something like this. But do you think that's the real only incident of a pale crawler in the area, folks? It's possible, but I kind of, doubt it. If one's there, it's probably been there for a while, and maybe other people have seen it. All I can say, folks, is like the first story, maybe pale crawlers are, along with Thunderbirds and other entities, maybe responsible for the missing 411. But I can't say for sure, folks. In fact, the photo you're looking at now, it could be basically a photo our witness was referring to. Maybe. And as I heard, folks, this was a mock-up done with basically makeup and basically maybe CGI, but it certainly isn't a real photo. But this gives you an idea exactly what this woman saw and how terrifying it would be. And I can only imagine how horrifying this would be for anyone. Either way, Thunderbirds, do you think that basically they exist? What about pale crawlers? What else could actually be real and basically living out in the woods? Beyond anyone really basically knowing about it, folks. All we can do is just wonder. But now we're at the end, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel. Read comics that are bad for you. You can use the YouTube link down below in the descriptions or the chat to go subscribe me. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure you hit the part of the bell that give you all future notifications, and please share this video out. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video, so be sure to come back again then. Until next time, folks, I'll see you all again soon.